You ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready, man.
All right.
Let's do it.
Right, so here this is, get this out. Faitheism Project Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3. Yeah, okay. I can remember that. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Faitheism Project Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3. My name is Alan Katz. I've always been grateful to Hebrew School for making me the atheist I so proudly am today.
And my name is Randy Lovejoy, and I specialize in working outside of the church and inside of the faith. And that relates to this topic today in a very particular way.
How clever of us to have done that.
I know, isn't that amazing? I mean, it's just incredibly clever, but it's all Alan. Alan's the clever one. I fake clever.
You
do it well.
Faux clever. That's me. We haven't talked for 2 weeks because there was a Thanksgiving break. So right. Even though we try not to be too timely because of our subject matter, I'll ask anyway. Hey, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was a really good ritual. What I loved about it was that my mom was able to fly over from Dallas. She's 86 and has some mobility issues, but she was able to come and join us. And so we had 10 people at our house, and it was nice to be physically present again. And it just went really well. I mean, we got to host people. That felt new as well. So it was good. It was good all around. By the end of it, we were pretty worn out because it was more people time than I'd say we've gotten since the pandemic. We have to get kind of used to lots of people time again, which it's a good thing, but it's kind of tiring.
Now fess up, you did not miss the cleaning up afterwards part, did you?
No, the good thing about that was that my mom actually has a caregiver that came with her, a young woman who was amazing. I mean, she just incredible. So she wanted to come to LA. She was excited about seeing the city. We said, all right, let's work a deal. We'll fly you here. We'll show you around. So anyway, she and I did I did most of the cooking. So she and Cheryl did a whole lot of the cleanup before I knew it. So that was pretty nice. So I did the work on the front end of it. So it worked out well. But how about you? I mean, how'd it go?
Well, we went up to Santa Cruz.
Oh, nice. All right.
Because now we just posted Tristan the other day the episode of our two sons, and Tristan, of course, he did the podcast from Santa Cruz. It's very hard to get Tristan out of Santa Cruz. He's stuck. He's
rooted there, huh?
He's ensconced. But so we decided the four of us would join up in Santa Cruz. So Helen,
your daughter as well. Yeah. So
and so I flew up to Helen drove up a few days early to get on the road. She wanted to have a few days of time off by herself, which was she enjoyed it immensely.
Be a nice drive
well, she went to Santa Barbara for 2 days.
Yeah.
Then went to Santa Cruz a day early and hung with Tristan. And then I flew up to Sacramento. Bianca, she goes to Davis, which is right next to Sacramento. So she picked me up. We drove down to Santa Cruz.
Oh, wow.
Annette and Lucas also joined us in Santa Cruz.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it was really, really fun. So this was the first time that Lucas got to meet Tristan's girlfriend.
Okay. All right.
Taylor.
Right. Okay.
And so, that's a very important moment where, your bestie growing up finally meets your girlfriend. Lucas has had a girlfriend forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, then we also got to meet Taylor's parents for the first time. Tristan and Taylor have been going out for almost, I think, 2 years.
Okay.
Long ride. It's so hard it might be 3 years at this point because of the pandemic time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we got to meet Taylor's parents, which was a real pleasure. It's funny. Taylor's dad is a general surgeon.
Oh, wow!
And my dad was a general surgeon.
And
nice
on top of that,
He was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And my dad was also in the Air Force.
Um,
And he has a whole history in Northern Virginia. And of course, I grew up in Baltimore.
wow.
So we,
Wow.
strangely enough, we found ourselves these two strangers with an incredible amount in common, and we just like long lost friends.
So good. That was actually one of the things when we were around the table with all 10 of us, because there was my mom, from Texas. There were Cheryl's parents, and then Jessica, Dave's daughter. Dave wasn't able to make it for this Thanksgiving, but his daughter was there. And one of the things that Jessica, his daughter, talked about was just how thankful she was that all of our families could come together, though being different, and really enjoy each other, to the point that like her dad and Cheryl's parents have gone on trips together. Mom's gone on a trip with Cheryl's mom. They've actually chosen to go on trips together, even though there are a lot of differences in terms of who they are. But she was just giving thanks that we could actually all come around the table and enjoy each other's company, even though we have a whole lot of differences between us. So that's cool that you guys were able to make that connection. Because I think that's one of the things that can be a real blessing with, when our families grow. Or it can be a curse if so yay when it's a blessing. Yeah, that's cool.
So it was lovely. We got a walk through the redwood forest on Thanksgiving, which was lovely. Walks
Nice.
on the beach.
Yeah.
It was super. It was, and of course, it's lovely to spend time with family. As you know, it's one of the rituals that we've been missing.
Yeah.
Which brings us to what we're going to talk about today.
That's right.
This subject of rituals. Now, of course, the whole nature of ritual comes from religion. What is it? It's the Latin word is ritus, which means right. So, okay, you can't deny where it comes from. It comes from the observance of customs having to do with the sacred. That's where the whole notion of a ritual comes from. So there's no denying its religious origin, but that doesn't mean we can't steal from it.
Well, and it doesn't mean that even the religious origin of the word is actually latching onto something that's human and even pre.
Oh, indeed.
Pre its ritual form. Because that's, to me, there's an overlap between habit and ritual and, what I like to call it kind of rhythm of life. It's just like how your life flows broadly on a regular basis. And then ritual to me is kind of a subset of that, which is, traditionally in the sense of how does your everyday life connect with your faith? So I'm looking forward to talking about this for, in terms of the religious, non-religious kind of overlap of it, but also because we've all been forced to change our rituals or our habits by COVID. And that's still in turmoil, and it's still unclear how we do that. And we've even formed some other habits or rituals, even in the midst of all of this, that, it's like, how long are those going to continue with us? So it is, it's a topic that's very real. This is not just theoretical. This is something we've all had to deal with, more than we wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. The protocols of whether to wear a mask or not to wear a mask, where there is something somewhat ritualistic about it.
Yeah. And even, just with the response to the Omicron variant, it's been fascinating to me to watch sort of the interactions between different countries on how they respond to it, because there's almost already I don't know if I call it a ritual. We can, but a habit where it's kind of like, okay, if it shows up, the job's to shut everything down, say the UK's response to South Africa. But then, I was reading an editorial by a leading South African epidemiologist who was one of the ones that publicized Omicron. And she was just saying, we didn't expect the response from the UK, and we're actually a little upset at them because, yes, it's here, but we don't have anybody hospitalized at that point. And we don't know how bad it is. And, you've just shut down all travel from South Africa, which really hits us hard economically. But to me, part of it is politicians feeling like their job's on the line with COVID. And if they don't stop it from showing up in their country, then they're in trouble, which is weird to me too, because there's an assumption under that as politicians, they're actually able to control a virus, which to me is an incredibly suspect assumption. It's like, of course you can't control a virus or its variants. That's called human life. So this idea that you've got to take this hard and fast, I get it, but it's just odd. So it just feels like, are we going to get into a ritual where there are these super broad, sharp, quick shutdowns whenever things happen? Or is this just a temporary thing? And at some point we're going to be like, okay, this is killing us economically. We can't keep doing this.
You ask some tricky questions, my friend.
There's multiple, it's a complex deal there. Yeah. I even read another woman that was, I think she was in the medical field. I don't remember her exact title, but high up. And she said, this is the thing we've been worried about with the travel shutdowns is we don't want countries to stop telling other countries when a variant appears. But we're giving people like South Africa, they may think, maybe we shouldn't have said anything for a while until we knew more about it. Didn't work out
quite so well. It's being honest suddenly stops.
Right. And we don't want that because I think, I feel like most people would agree that China was often obviously quite hesitant to express what needed to be expressed. And now it seems like other countries have a motive too, kind of like the China method might work better than, the South Africa method. So anyway, but that, to me, that's an interesting example of ritual at a larger level, not just individually, but in terms of how do we respond to viruses? How do we respond to what, and we've got another ritual coming up. What is it? By tonight or something, or maybe they're gonna, get the budget amount raised again so that there's an odd ritual that we've gotten kind of fallen into as a nation on that one too, that I think other countries are like, that's really weird. Why?
Although yes, it's somewhere between ritual and kabuki.
Yeah. So, I think we're surrounded with rituals if we broaden that definition, both personally or in our family lives, or our national lives, or even globally, because to me, bottom at its most basic, it's structure. It's like we need some kind of structure.
Indeed.
Because otherwise, I think of just even our limitations in, say, vision. We can only see a certain not bandwidth, whatever the word is for vision, I guess. Whereas other animals can see more or less or different or whatever. Well,
they see light on different spectra.
Yeah. So to me, it's like reality is far larger than we can possibly process or deal with. Therefore, we need some kind of structure that we impose on it to be able to make any kind of decisions and make any sense and get anywhere. Otherwise, it's just like input overload and we can't do any of it. So I see that at its broadest is what we're talking about here.
So, all right. There's simply no escaping it. There's no escaping ritual.
Right. And ritual is minimalist, but it's still there,
ritual preceded the creation of the word ritual.
Right.
When in Latin they came up with the word ritus, rite, they were articulating something that existed in human behavior for a very, very long time. Hey, there's even a lot of data that suggests that chimpanzees
have rituals.
Rituals. They've been observed in that we'll attach there's an article in, I think it was in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
About chimpanzees who had a ritual of throwing stones at a particular tree. And those who have studied the chimpanzees, they argue, again, can you really get that far inside the chimpanzee's perspective that there's a spiritual aspect to what the chimpanzees are doing, that this particular tree, because it's always that tree, and they don't go find new stones, they pick up those stones and they use those stones again and again and again as part of this ritual.
So repetition then is part of what we're talking about as well, where we repeat acts on a regular basis. And I remember I always when we first had our kids and we're trying to figure out how to be good parents, one of the things that really stuck with me was they said, try to have a routine.
Oh, sure.
Because that works better for children.
One thing a day. Yeah.
Then if you're kind of all over the map all the time. And I've definitely found that to be true with my two sons, was just the more we could keep some routine in their life, obviously with fun and adventure and all that too, but with some kind of basic routine, that it enabled them to focus on other aspects of life. And I've got this cool book, Daily Rituals, which is kind of a fun one for reading before bed or something, because it's like 150 short entries on different artists. But William James, they've got a quote from William James. He says, "The more of the details of our daily life we can hand over to the effortless custody of automatism," he says, "the more our higher powers of mind will be set free for their own proper work. There is no more miserable human being than one in whom nothing is habitual but indecision, and for whom the lighting of every cigar, the drinking of every cup, the time of rising and going to bed every day, and the beginning of every bit of work are subject to express volitional deliberation." And I think that's another part of this, is that there are some rituals or habits that you just kind of, you button your shirt,
scheduling things, for instance.
Yeah. It's just, again, it's a way to actually move forward in the face of innumerable possibilities, opportunities, or whatever. One thing I thought about though, as I was reading about the animals, one of the things, there is some ritual that's actually, it's not like we have complete free will of ritual choice, because there are cycles we're born into, such as daytime and nighttime. It's like that happens no matter what. I can decide to ignore it, but it's just part of life. Or the different seasons, those happen, and you need to act in different ways in different parts of the seasons if you want to survive. And so there's some,
although there are rituals that are geared towards the fact that there are seasons.
That's right. And even celebrations of, or gatherings for the harvest, or whatever, that are built on that. But I do think that there's some aspect of ritual that is just there, which we could ignore, but usually to our own detriment, as well. So it's an interesting mix.
What kind of, when you say that, the ones that we can ignore to our detriment, what kind of rituals are you thinking of?
Well, I mean, one would be like, daytime, nighttime, or you dress more warmly in winter. It's very basic stuff that
I see. So recognize the important rituals. Dress warmly when it's cold.
Yeah.
Layer up.
Well, why do people bring out their winter clothing at winter? Maybe there's some free will involved, but mostly it's because it's cold and they want to be warm, So I think the only point I'm making is it's not like humans or animals can choose to be ritualistic or not. simply. It's more complicated than that because there are some things that you kind of have to do.
Is there
and then there are other things we develop. So
is there a difference between ritual and doing things because the seasons are changing?
I don't think so. I feel like they overlap. Now we develop rituals out of, like you were saying, out of the different seasons. But
now in Judaism, there's well, people, the observant Jews, not people like me. The at Passover, well, you have two sets of dishes all year. You have one for meat and one for everything else. For milk dishes, you're not supposed to mix meat and milk if you keep kosher.
Yeah.
Something like that. But that creates certain rituals, and the way that you have to clean your kitchen requires certain it's ritualistic practices, none of which you have to do. I mean, if you didn't do them, nothing would change. And I'm simply mentioning this because, the seasons are going to change whether you like it or not.
Right.
And you can wear the same damn clothes if you want. But, wearing shorts and a t-shirt in the dead of winter, if you live in Minnesota,
right,
you are not going to be a happy camper.
And
you'll be a frostbitten camper, frostbitten places, terrible places.
But there are other rituals that we set up that it's not like gravity. It's not like, I have a ritual of not jumping off cliffs because I would die, versus rituals that are like, oh, if you don't clean the plates differently, then suddenly you don't die immediately. And there is a difference there. And I think that's interesting in terms of what are those rituals that, that begin to be developed that aren't required by the basics of human existence or something.
Let's follow that. Okay. Now you happen to be in a line of work that's very dependent upon ritual. And really, at the end of the day, are any of those rituals, necessary for life as we know it to continue? A lot of these rituals have been created for a purpose.
Sure. Well, and like one, let's set that table a little bit. One, for example, like a lot of people have heard of Ebenezer Scrooge. But do they know what Ebenezer means or where that came from? Because in 1 Samuel, that's where Ebenezer is used as a little tower of stones to remind the people of Israel when God acted on their behalf. So you've actually, there's a remembrance part of ritual that's really important. Thus, Passover, for example, is a remembrance, or for Christians with the Eucharist or the Lord's Supper, which is actually a play on the Passover. That'd be another interesting conversation sometime. But one of the things that the pastor says in preparation is, do this in remembrance of me. So it's about memory. So there's a lot of ritual that's about memory that doesn't necessarily mean if you don't do this that something's going to happen to you, but there's something that you're trying to pass on for generations that people remember and connect themselves to and live their lives out of. I think that's an important part of religious ritual in particular, but there's others, where it's, we've got memorial statues, memorial parks, all sorts of things.
Before you leave the church entirely, I want to go back into the church.
Sure.
Among the fascinating conversations that you and I have had are the ones where members of a congregation are unhappy because they don't like how the ritual's being done.
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas some, at the exact same time, are perfectly happy with how the ritual is being done.
Yeah.
And so even within a single church community, you can have people who are not in agreement or happy with the same ritual.
Yeah. I was just
what do you
watching,
do?
have you, this is an old British comedy, but I love it. It's called To the Manor Born. Have you ever heard that one?
I've heard of them. Sure.
It's very funny because the woman is a very snooty, lived in the place for 400 years. Then she has to sell it to this Czechoslovakian grocery magnate, but then they develop a relationship. But at one point, she says to the cleric there locally, because as the privileged person, she's like a key player in the church as well. She says to the pastor or the priest, she says, by the way, priest, I understand that you've been using some of the newer worship forms. Let's have none of that here. It's like, no, we stick with tradition. We do not change anything. And I think that is what a lot of churches have had to deal with and are definitely dealing with today, is that some of it is personality. It really is. Honestly, some people do better with change than others. So you get just personality that's part of it. But there are other people where it really gets down to the stuff of their faith, which is that the way they define their faith is on the basis of rituals being done in a very particular way. Mm-hmm. And if those rituals are not done in that particular way, then either they can't participate, or the church is not being faithful, or those people are not being faithful. And that's where, I don't see that as only religious. I feel like I see that nationally as well in many cases, but it's this odd, it's definitely about ritual, and it's about self-identity, ritual, belonging, meaning, purpose. All that stuff becomes together in such a way that if you shift one thing, it threatens everything. So,
which is, I guess, where is this where dogma overtakes ritual? And
yeah, I think in the more recent sense of that term, because originally dogma just meant defining what you believe, and then it became more of a negative. So as a negative, yeah, I think that's where what happens is that you've still got rituals, and what those rituals were meant to protect has died in many cases. And so all that's left is the ritual, not the meaning behind it.
Yes, it's just the form and none of the.
Yeah, and see, that's, part of it too. If we had a Catholic in on this conversation, it would be interesting too, because as a Protestant, I have a lot less invested in ritual. It's very basic. One of the things Protestants did is they tried to boil it down to just a couple of things that were essential in terms of ritual. Whereas, the Catholic Church of that time had a really broad list of things that had to be done in a certain way.
Why do you suppose, if you look at other religions, Buddhism has some ritual, you got mantras, things like that. I don't know. I guess Buddhism, Hinduism. I don't know. I don't know what rituals there are. With Islam, yes, there are significant rituals.
There's a set number.
But that seems like it might. That's an outgrowth of, because it's one of the Abrahamic faiths.
It could be. I do know. I haven't looked recently at Hinduism, but I know with the temples and things, there's still temple statues, very particular practices that you're engaged in. But I think that comes back to, what rituals do religiously is they're trying to help you integrate your faith in a very practical way in your everyday life. That's what they're trying to do. And then what happens though is that if the everyday life changes, but the rituals don't, that's when the rituals start to become a problem, because you're holding on to the rituals when they're not helping people structure their lives religiously as they used to. And that's where we're in major trouble right now as the church in the US, because all of our rituals and structures, the vast majority of them, do not fit with this post-pandemic way of life. And so people are really struggling, because I was just talking to somebody today that they said a group of people they were with in a meeting, all of them had been involved in some larger congregations, but they weren't anymore. And they were all trying to figure out, does that mean I'm not a Christian anymore? Because I want to be a Christian, but I can't keep doing the church thing. So see, that's the ritual. The rituals have become disconnected to the faith, the heart of what it's supposed to be about.
Yeah. It's become hollowed out.
That's right. And that's where, and that's the interesting thing, is that a number of people that have defined religion, especially academically, typically all they're defining is the ritual or the stuff that's hollowed out. They're not defining or naming the real live stuff that's going on at the heart of it. And it's just a couple of quick examples. One is, Jesus in the Gospels, Jesus got in trouble for letting his disciples eat like grain. In other words, they were harvesting it because they were taking grain, breaking it, and eating it on the Sabbath. And, some of the leaders at the time in the story came to him and said, hey, you're breaking the law by doing this. And his comment was, haven't you ever read when David took his soldiers and went into the temple and ate the bread that was only for the priests, because they needed it? So there's kind of this idea of, yeah, the rituals are great, but, there's a way in which Jesus at least somewhat relativized them and said, look, hey, we needed something to eat. We were hungry. We were in a field. Yes, it was on the Sabbath, but we didn't blow the whole thing by eating, but he wasn't tossing it, but I think he was trying to keep the life in the ritual by doing that. And just one other, when I was in Mexico, working there and a younger Christian still trying to figure out my rituals, one of the things I did is I climbed up. Tell me if I told you the story, but I climbed up on the roof of the 3-story apartment thing where we were all staying in the mornings. And I had a way that I would sing some songs, read some scripture, pray, and I'd be ready for the day that way. It worked really. I had this amazing view of Mexico City too, just like you look all around and it just goes as far as the eye can see. So it was a great deal. And that worked each morning for like a couple of months, right? Then I started going and doing that and it wasn't working. And I was getting really frustrated. Like, come on, I need the boost. I got a lot of stuff I'm supposed to be doing today. I'm doing the same things. What's going on? Well, the thing that struck me over a few days of trying to make it work, I felt like God said, hey, I'm not a one-armed bandit, that like you just pull the thing and you get a result. It's like, that's not the relationship. You don't have me pegged. I can do whatever I want to do. And I was willing to work with you for a while on that. We're done. Now it's moving on to something else. That I tell you that story because that's the part I think of faith that gets lost with the ritual, because the ritual can actually become a way to keep yourself removed from the actual relationship or the heartbeat that is meant to be religion, because you're just focused on
the religion. In fact, the ritual just it becomes all about the surface actions.
Yes,
and that's you doing your bit.
That's right. And that's where a lot of the judgmentalism and legal, it's bad for the people that do it. And it's bad for the people in relationship to the people that do that, because you start to dry up and it just starts to be, did you go to church on Sunday? And it's like, no. Well, why not? Well, I went with my family to the beach. Well, you're not faithful, and it's like, what are you talking about? Going to the beach with your family could be a really great thing to do in terms of faith. It's not like divorce from faith because you didn't show up to church on Sunday, but that's how the stuff, so to me, that's where ritual becomes a huge negative, is when it's actually replacing what's supposed to be the heart of faith rather than supporting what's supposed to be the heart of faith. And I think, just jumping out for a second from the church mode, I think that happens with a lot of stuff nationally as well. Stuff, we just do it because we did it before without any sense of what's the purpose of this? Why are we doing this? And is it still supporting the purpose that we wanted it to support? And it can be very painful adapting and changing, but the point is it's a structure that's meant to focus and give life, not a structure that becomes life. That's the difference, I think. So
let's jump out of the religious sphere.
Please. Yes.
Now, rituals, once those of us in the secular world took them over.
Yep.
I think rituals transcend religion, being human, and having a habit, 2 habits, 3 habits. Now you're deep into ritual.
That's right.
And good God, the way that how we start our day. I know I've got my morning ritual.
Yep.
Between whichever cannabis I'm going to smoke to start my day, since I'm a wake and bake guy, that plus the coffee and the ritual of the coffee.
Yep.
Is, and of course, how people prepare their coffee. Yeah, that's how you like your coffee, but there's a ritual to it. Let me go back to marijuana for a second. Now, marijuana doesn't really have many rituals. Back when I used to be a drug abuser, which I'm not now. I just smoke marijuana.
I was working on it. Okay. Got to define that stuff. No, anyway, move on.
Anyway, back when I used to abuse drugs. Now, cocaine, strangely, one of the things that I liked about doing cocaine when I used to do cocaine was the ritual, that pouring the stuff out on a surface, tapping it out, and then doing the lines whenever you're going to do the lines. There was something appealing perversely about the ritual.
Yeah.
That when I swore often, and I will never do that ever again. But yeah, from time to time, when you see it in a movie, people tapping it out.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. The ritual had a strange appeal, a very strange appeal. It is the nature of ritual. As a writer, as any writer will tell you, it is all about ritual. How you start your writing day, which really is your work avoidance rituals that you have, and you do exactly the same. And the point of the exercise is to avoid the work for as long as you possibly can until you suddenly realize you've run out of work avoidance.
Yeah, got to get it done. Yeah, deadline is looming here.
There's a terrific, the movie itself is kind of mediocre. It was made in the late 60s, maybe the early 70s, called Bye Bye Braverman. And it's a movie about 5 male Jewish friends who their friend Braverman has a heart attack, dies, and they go to his funeral. And on the morning of his funeral, this is the morning that we meet them all because their friend Braverman is dead. And one of Braverman's friends is a writer who has a deadline. And before he heads to the funeral, he's trying to get some work done. And we see him do his whole work avoidance ritual. It is hilarious. It's hilarious. And most of it centers on he's got, and again, this is from the 60s, the late 60s, early 70s. There were no computers. Guy had a typewriter and a pad of paper and here comes the work avoidance, a coffee can filled with pencils, real wooden pencils. And his work avoidance ritual was to take each pencil out, put it into the pencil sharpener there. The pencil was already sharp, and sharpen it some more. And you're literally watching him stare at the pad. No, not time yet. Go sharpen a pencil. Sharpen a pencil.
So, what do you think's going on with that? I mean, what's going on mentally with that? Is there any way to name it, or is it just?
Yeah. It is. Boy, it is ritualistic. It is absolutely positively ritualistic, and it's kind of fear-based.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the thing it's not that you don't look, you want to get to work, you really do, but it's the fear of failure.
Yeah.
That you won't be able to get it up, that you won't be able to get up to speed, and that this will be the day that everybody figures out you're a fraud. And so whereas
I get that. Yep.
when you're doing a project where you're just You're so in love with it that really, when it's really working and you begin to write and you've imagined this whole other world that exists for that moment only in your head and on the pages that you have produced, you want to escape to that world. You literally disappear from this world and you walk around in that one. And sometimes you get so into a project, you really don't even leave that world. And so you can't wait to get back to your keyboard the next day. So you can hear their voices. You hear their voices all the time, but you can begin to tap those voices out and capture them and put them down.
Yeah.
Those are not you don't try to avoid work those days.
But is there anything where you're trying to find that place? You're trying to break through the fears and find that place where you're going to lose yourself in what you're writing? Is there any struggle? I mean, I totally get the fear side, but how do you break into that?
It depends upon how writers approach writing is kind of what you're asking. I mean, I've always approached writing from the point of view of you can't sit down to write and go, well, what should I write on? Because the universe is just too big.
Yeah.
And every day I need to start the night before. I need to know the night before what I'm going to write the next day.
Oh, that's interesting.
And to a degree, I'm pre-programming, but I need to know what my obligation is, what my writing obligation is, what my day will be, not what I'm going to do that day, but what's the day that I have to make?
Yeah.
What must I accomplish in order to feel like I earned my keep that day? You know what I mean? And that becomes really, really important. In order to get a project done, you're just carving this into bite-sized pieces. All right, then I need to get this amount done that day, this amount the next day, that amount the next day, and I should be there on time.
But this is very entrepreneurial. One of the things I'm hearing, I mean, you have a deadline of sorts, but it's not like you're going into an office where a boss is going to be checking in on you, over your shoulder. It's more like, I mean, and to me, that makes ritual even more important because you're trying to focus yourself, break through your fears and get the work done. Right. I mean, that's, so that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
You need the ritual really to grind you down to the point where you stop resisting the work.
Right. Yeah.
The work avoidance ritual is the spring loading mechanism that is loading the spring inside your head.
Yeah.
And really so that hopefully if that's what you have to do to get to it, when you finally sit down to do it, suddenly it explodes.
That's
nice.
Just a couple of thoughts as from the notes as I was thinking about this. I was talking to a guy that he said, and I don't think we have to limit to 4, but he just said there's a lot of people are driven by 4 unexamined fears underneath everything. Like they think they're doing this, but if they really look, the reason what they're really after by doing this is this. So his 4 are that, and that different people, it's different ones, but he said, to be right is one of them. So your hesitation is, I'm not sure I'm going to be right if I do this. So you're struggling with that. Another one's related is to be in control. Another is to feel good. And another is to look good. And it's, to me, I think there's a part of ritual that I've seen, at least in my own life, because there's 2 that I struggle with more than others as I've thought about that. But the rituals have to do with trying to kind of keep those demons at bay, those fears or anxieties at bay of, I might not be right, or I might not be in control, or I'm not feeling good, or I may not look good, and I think that, to me, that's an important part of kind of working with our rituals is really thinking through, what am I doing here and why am I doing this? And what's the fear, like I mean, I could eat at any time of day. If I had donuts all around the house, I could have donuts every 10 to 15 minutes, probably. Has nothing to do with being hungry, has everything to do with that burst of sugar and dough that makes me feel good for a moment and that keeps me from thinking about the stuff I'm struggling to produce, figure out, or whatever, right? So it's wanting to feel good, and yet that ritual would be one that is really detrimental to me overall, and is going to cause all sorts of other problems, so it's almost like shooting myself in the foot. And of course there are plenty of rituals like that, but anyway, I just, that breaking through the fear, that's something I've kind of been working on. And I think COVID and all of the changes in habits is a really great time to think that stuff through, because we're all, trying to figure out what our habits are. Some of them are in tatters, some of them we hope to resurrect, some of them, some of them are still there. And some, like for me personally, just honestly, I have streamed more video since COVID than probably all of my life combined. And it's like, why am I doing this? Well, it's because it keeps some anxiety at bay. I don't even need to be very invested in the show. It's just as long as people are talking, the show's running and I'm working on something. But there's more going on underneath. So I don't think that's a great ritual. It serves its purpose, but I'm sure there are better ones I can find that would actually be much more productive. So anyway,
let's pursue this. Let's bring this to a close this way.
Yes. Yes.
What would you say, looking at your daily, your quotidian life, what's the favorite ritual that you have? The one that you enjoy, the one that you really enjoy.
Well, I'll just go with this one. I'm not sure enjoy is, but the one that's most effective in breaking me through any kind of anxiety or whatever and getting me moving is something like I did this morning, which is I get up early, I go to the downtown Y, and I work out for an hour. And I also have a ritual as I'm working out. I'm listening to particular things and all that. But by the time I'm driving home, I have broken through all the crud. And if I don't do that, then I have to find other methods to do that. But exercise is massively important for me as
a ritual, as a really positive ritual,
to work through the kind of anxieties, which, that's kind of been more than anything. My struggle has been anxiety and more than other emotions.
Yeah, sure.
And working out does it. Plus it also has other positive benefits, versus the streaming, which has negative, but the workout is pretty much positive all around. There's not really a negative that I can come up with that one. So that's why that one is a really important one for me. So yeah. I mean, there's others that would be more on the enjoy, and it is enjoyable, but not like in a, oh, that feels really good kind of way. It's more like, yes, I've broken through. I can take on life now. So.
I'll answer the question.
Yeah. You do it. You go.
And it's funny because it's exactly the same. It's physical.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And, once I got past my depression and I stopped judging myself and I started to enjoy playing tennis, the stretching routine that I do before I play tennis.
Yeah.
And it's the same routine. It's about 10, 12 minutes. And I really enjoy, it's one time I was a little late for tennis and I got onto the tennis court and I didn't do my ritual and I kind of strained something, but it was, my game was not the same because I didn't start it with my ritual.
Yeah.
And I was keenly there was a point where I suddenly realized this just feels wrong.
Yeah.
But there's the stretching. First of all, it feels really good. It slows everything down. I'm aware of nothing but my own body. And if I'm talking to the person I'm playing with, I'm talking about really, by then, usually, when I get into my ritual, she's into her ritual, and hers is she's bouncing the ball in a racket. She's focused and she's getting into her own little zen. That's her ritual. And me, I'm beginning to think about what it is that I need to focus on as I'm playing that day. It's usually, man, spot the ball, get your racket all the way back and point your wrist. Would you just do that, please? Would you just do those simple things? That's my ritual. I've broken it down to a ritual.
Yeah.
Ball, racket back,
that's
feet,
right.
attack.
That's right.
It's literally, I've made it a 4-step process.
Let's just flip this right in our conclusion for people, because I think, this is a really great time to think through your rituals and to realize the stuff just like you shared. But let's try the flip side. Where is an area of life that you're trying to develop a ritual or a better ritual, or you need some kind of a ritual to get you through that? And I'll start if you want, since I asked the question. But like, to me, is what do I do at about 2:30 to 3 o'clock during the day? That is my low. Like, everything just kind of goes down and I don't really want to do anything. And so what do I do there? And I'm still searching for a good ritual for that. Although I have to say that having a conversation with you about that time in the podcasts, I'm usually up again by the time we're done. I'm ready to go. So it may be about human contact and conversation at that time of day. I don't know, but I hit this low and I just don't feel like I've actually nailed what to do to help myself during that time. What is there something like that for you where you're like still figuring this one out?
I'm terrible calling people.
Sorry?
If I have to call people on the telephone.
Okay.
I mean, if I could have a ritual that just made calling people, I don't know what it is. It's something weird inside my head. Face to face, great. Zoom calls face to face. I don't mind calling people, but I do. It's not that I mind it. It's if I can avoid it, I'll avoid that.
Yeah.
I will put that to the end of my list of stuff I got to do today, even if there's simple, basic calls. Yeah, I gotta call a junkyard to come replace a couple of car parts that are sitting in my back garden. What is my problem?
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone and.
It's funny. I get that. For me, part of it's like reservations or calling a place before going. It's like Cheryl will just be like, "What is your deal?" You'll talk to people, but like to call a place and say, so there's certain kinds of calls that I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but it's like, I would rather not. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And it's strange. And you can't even articulate. It just seems irrational. And I can't.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, if there was a ritual to get past the places where we're irrational, that'd be so helpful.
Yeah. And I think the pandemic's like made that worse, I think, because my world really has shrunk quite a bit, not just because of the pandemic, but other things, but it's like re-engaging humans. It's like, there's some part of me that's like, I'm kind of good, and then once I'm with people, I'm like, wow, I've really missed this. But before that, it's like, oh, really? I got to get dressed and like go to a restaurant with somebody, really, couldn't I just hang out here with a cup of coffee? But then once I'm there, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been missing this. And I think that's part of the difficulty of adapting your rituals to, some of the people like in churches, they've got it set up. They like it. They don't want to mess around with, oh, do I really have to try like a new thing? And what if it doesn't work? And this has worked so well for me, and you've got to, it actually takes energy to change your rituals. But it's so important for us to do that. And especially in this day in which we live, because my bombshell to end this would be, we are going to be adapting to change for the rest of our lives. So get used to it, because it's not going to stop anytime in our lifetime. So that's
rituals, can't live with them, can't live without them. And on that bombshell.
I like it. That's good.
Thank you, everyone, as always, for joining us and for making us one of your rituals.
That's right. Definitely. And we'll back for some more ritual fun. So, yes, all sorts of ritual.
Till next time.
Yeah. Bye.